This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Stone is not afraid of rain. The stone is always wet. How would you interpret that?
Morning, and thank you for having me.
Karibu-san.
First, just to say I'm not good with riddles. What did you say again?
The waterside stone is never afraid of the rain because it's always wet.
It's always wet. I don't know. I think about the fact that we are seasoned, and the fact that we are seasoned. We are not worried about anything that might come our way. I mean, that's how I look at it. We are seasoned.
You see, at the end of the day, you shouldn't be afraid of riddles because your interpretation is always perfect. It is unique to you, you know. But let's get to the conversation. So here we are talking about care work and how it is a hidden economy. If you just look at some numbers, so it is a sector that is worth around 2 trillion Kenyan shillings based off what KNBS said. And when we talk about 2 trillion shillings care work, what exactly does that mean?
So think about agriculture. And agriculture contributes about a quarter of the economy. But yes, and it's literally equivalent to unpaid care and domestic work. That is how big this sector is. But also to understand it better, start from the point that there are activities that are undertaken that support us in every way, psychologically, physically, you know. And some of these activities are paid for, some are not paid for. What is paid for includes, you know, work around education, health, which is about only 25% of the, you know, care work generally. But 75% is work that we don't value, we don't even recognize. It is like an iceberg. What is above is the 25%, which is paid for domestic work. But the 75% is underneath. It is not seen. It is not recognized. It is not paid for. So think about it like that, and the fact that in every way, including I see you have cups of tea here. Somebody has already served you. Somebody has provided some care to you. So if you look at it from that point of view, then it is important that we recognize that there is work that is ongoing, that is not seen, and that is not recognized. It's very, very important.
You know, Elizabeth, you speak about something that is very close to my heart because I remember at the time growing up, Mama had to leave work to raise us, you know. And at that time, because she had forgone her employment, salary for her now became... What exactly? They not exist. And when you have such discussions, one would look at that and say, there's this word, my mom is just a stay-at-home mom. You know, just that word just for me is demeaning.
Including the fact that you have said Mama had to leave work to stay at home. Mama left paid work to stay home and do unpaid work. So either way, Mama did work. Only that on one hand it was not paid. It was paid, on the other hand it was not paid.
So when you look at it in that light, it is now a question of how much value do we place in this sector that is not recognized in this society? You know, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has come up and said this care work is around 118,000 shillings annually. And when we talk about it like that, what does that mean?
And perhaps, Dr. as you come in there, Elizabeth, who are these people when you're saying the unpaid domestic worker cares that are not being paid for the work? Who are these persons that are not really getting? They're offering the service, they're doing the work, but they're not getting paid.
So let's go back. Yes.
And why is this information important?
So let's go back. And look at the fact that the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has undertaken a time use survey. And in that time use survey, they were looking at how we spend our time. So within a period of 24 hours, how do we spend our time? As men, as women, as youth, as older persons, how do we spend our time? On what do we spend our time? And so the findings were that women spend about close to 5 hours of their day on unpaid care work, whereas men spend about 54 minutes a day on paid care work. So whether you are looking at women Elizabeth's age or younger women or older women, they still spend a lot more time on unpaid care work than the men do. So that is a point to start from. So the burden of care largely lies on women and girls as compared to men. So that is the beginning. So why is it important? First, it is important that we recognize the Kenya government is contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. In Goal 5 on gender equality and the empowerment of women, there is an indicator 5.4, which is calling upon us to recognize unpaid care work. And so this study is part of it. The Time Use Survey is part of that recognition that there's an issue, and that issue is largely on women and girls, and that we need to recognize that it is a problem. We need to recognize that there is unpaid work that is happening. Normally we just say, my wife stays at home, or my sister stays at home. She doesn't work, which is not true. She does work. So recognize that it's an issue, that it's actually work, and that it has an economic value, and work to reduce it. Okay, and how do we reduce it? Maybe using technology, different kind of technologies to reduce it. So, for instance, how much time do women spend going to collect firewood? And first of all, don't think about your situation, because we are not homogeneous. We are heterogeneous. We are different. Okay, different places. Their lived-in experiences are different. So, how much time are they spending going to collect water? How much time are they spending going to collect firewood? Okay, so reduce it using technologies, using infrastructure. Okay, then redistribute it across the board. Make sure that all of us are doing fairly, whatever. So if you're at home and you're married and you're young, you have a young child and she's busy in the kitchen, hold your baby, for goodness sake. There's nothing wrong with you holding the baby. Yeah. It's part of redistributing this work in the household. And then reward accordingly. So in a case where we have people who are doing unpaid care, or doing domestic work, for instance, how are we rewarding them? Are we appreciating that they're doing some work and rewarding them accordingly? So reward accordingly. And finally, represent. Let's hear voices of people speaking about what it is that they go through. Allow people to unionize, so that they can influence the policies at their workplaces, influence their salaries, for instance.
Well, that is because there is the paid domestic work.
Yes.
And I do agree it plays a bigger role in supporting our society by and large. And so compensation of payment or salary on that ought to be well commensurate with the services they render.
Otherwise we will not have all these girls running to the Middle East because they are looking for better pay.
And still they go there and become domestic workers, and have lots of issues again coming from there, because there's the issue of labor export, modern slavery, all these issues come into play. But I want to bring the point closer home to our domestic family unit. Some would argue that what my wife does is part of contribution and building the family. And remember also, we are existing in a cultural setup because we are Africans, and culture is hugely an influencer. If we take some of these roles, the social roles, because that's how we've been socialized, wouldn't that then compromise the family unit and the values they are in? Some may argue that you're reducing a woman to just the mother, or just existing in the household. You're giving too much to the man. Do I need to start paying my wife because of the services she rendered at home?
Well, it could be the man doing the unpaid work.
Or the opposite. It could be the man doing unpaid work. So how do we marry in a larger context the advancements that we are seeking for human rights with the cultural existence, which also needs to be very well preserved?
So first of all, that advancement is not just for human rights and well-being. It's also for economic advancement of this country. How do we calculate our GDP? Okay, are we not leaving out certain sectors that contribute to the GDP? So that's what the other conversation. But going back to what you're saying, care is good for us.
Right.
And some of that care is direct care, and some of it is indirect care. The direct care is good for us. I'm taking care of my baby, I'm breastfeeding my child, I'm taking care of my husband and children. That is good care for us. It enhances harmony within the household. It enhances togetherness. It is what we need. It drives families. It enhances voluntarism also, and that is part of strengthening our culture as a people who are together, who are social. That is accepted, and that nobody is putting a money value on that, by the way. It is the indirect care that sometimes we outsource, and we can outsource, okay? And it can be a burden. Like I'm saying, why should somebody spend 1 hour going to collect water? Why can't we invest so that the water systems are close by? Okay? So that instead of spending that 1 hour going to collect water, you spend this time taking care of your family, going to the marketplace, going to work. Why should we spend so many hours going to collect firewood? Okay? Which also comes with sometimes risks for the girl child. When I know at one time we were saying that we could have a mtungi of gas at 500 shillings. If we had something like that, it would be wonderful. Then instead of spending so many hours, because that is part of food preparation, instead of spending all these hours going to collect this firewood. Again, as I say, don't think about your situation. Think about Kenya. It's heterogeneous. There are people who are suffering from what we are talking about. Some of us are not. We have water flowing at the tap. We have gas. Okay, some of them don't. So instead of that, can the government invest in clean energy so that this person has, mutungi gas affordable close by? You get? Yeah? So that is how we are looking at it, that there is care that we don't have to put a money value on. We cannot put a money value on, and we shouldn't put a money value on. But there's care that is indirect, that we can reduce using technology. That is the point. But we are also saying that culture changes.
Yes.
In the olden days, very few women went actually out of the home to work. They stayed home, they took care of their children. Maybe they didn't go to school too much. But now we have a situation where most women and men are also going out to work. Okay? So when they come back home, then what happens? Some of them can afford house help. So the conversations are around the conditions of work for this person. How much they're paid, how are they treated, is there health care for them, and whatnot. Some of them cannot. So when you come back home, you, husband and wife, you've been out the whole day. What are you saying? Do you put your feet up on the table and do nothing? Or that you support as much as you can? That is the point. And we need balance.
Right.
Okay? So if you are in a situation where the woman is overworked, really her productivity also goes down. And the welfare, and there's a lot of strife and, kelele at the household level. So that is the point, that balance.
Dismas is here chilling.
I'm trying to follow the conversation. And in all you've said, somebody needs to take a decision.
Yeah.
Is there a role for political leaders to take a decision? Like, for instance, the issues you are talking about, our elected members of the National Assembly or Senate alive to these conversations?
So, one of the first things that we have had to do, and I have been privileged to lead, the development of the national care policy in Kenya, the very first in Africa. It's only Cape Verde that has a plan, but even then it's a plan. It's not comprehensive. But Kenya has a national care policy that is now in cabinet. That has been, we have had a group of, institutions or people sitting there as part of the development of this. The government of Kenya, through the State Department of Agenda and Affirmative Action, their research institutes, their academia, their civil society organizations, their development organizations, we've all come together to say we need a policy. We need an umbrella. We need a footing upon which decisions can be made, at Parliament. And so through collaboration and, this policy has been developed, and it is there. And it is informed by the time use survey, which was saying, look, we have determined that women are spending almost, 4-5 times more time on unpaid care and domestic work.
Yeah.
So the time use survey was done. And then there was a needs assessment. And the needs assessment was asking the question is there need for care in Kenya? Is there supply for it? Okay. And yes, there is need for care, especially children who are young, up to 13 years old, and older persons, 65-year-old and above. And the people who need care mainly are children, are persons with disabilities, are older persons, and are persons with chronic illness or long-term health. And we don't have adequate facilities. So we needed to capture all this in a policy document, which has been done. And that policy document is waiting for approval So we expect that, the government will do the right thing. I'm not supposed to.
When you talk
like for instance,
policy document. Yeah. So once they have that policy document, then in terms of who has responsibilities around care, we talk about the diamond of care. And the diamond of care recognizes that government must, institution first to have a policy document in place to invest in infrastructure around care, to look at taxation, things like that, government. Okay. The second one is civil society organizations and communities as a whole, and to change people's attitudes, because we have just said we have a culture, okay, and men have a role they play and women have a role they play, but that is binary, and this them against us is not a good thing. We need to come together so that there is harmony, and we each tunashika kidogo kidogo, so that we can move forward. So civil society, communities have a role to play around attitude change moving forward, but also there's the households themselves and redistribution, as we said, they have a role to play. Private sector has a big role to play around innovating on technologies, around investing in communities and some of this investment. So we have a diamond of care in the sense that government has a role, private sector, civil society and households. All of us and members of parliament are part of all this
structure.
To them, the devil's advocates. So, like for instance, when members of the National Assembly come up with these water provision programs, and it saves the ladies, especially in the countryside, from maybe walking for 1 hour to go and get water. So the round trip is 2 hours. That adds value.
Absolutely adds value. That is why it's so important for us to understand what is it that we are saying. We are not just saying who's washing who's shirt. That's not what we are saying. We're saying there's a lot more to that, to these issues around care. So food production includes collection of water. It includes, collection of firewood. So in collection of water, we want water systems close by. So if a county invests in water systems so that water systems are close by, you are reducing the time that these people are wasting, men, women, young boys, because when you send young girls and young boys to go and collect water, what about their education? How much time is that taking away from their going to school? Okay, so that is good. Okay, so the members of parliament, the counties, the government investing in water systems, investing in clean energy, all that counts.
Allow me to draw a contrast. Back in 1990, we had the infamous Beijing movement for women empowerment.
Infamous?
Well, arguably. And
very famous.
In some quarters, it's not very well appreciated. However, here back in Kenya, it came and took off, and we saw the impact it has led to a society. Now, I'm trying to think about the impact of what this will have, because that Beijing Women Empowerment Program, which has given a modern society, in a manner of speaking, there are some negative connotations that are attributed to it, arguably so. There was a surge in what you'd call a single parenthood, because the girl child was empowered, and for some reason that interfered with the cultural fiber that we had that was binding us together. Then now we're trying to do some catch up with the boy child. When you project this into the future, 15, 20 years, have we, because this is the danger we have of now, bringing interventions that are a bit accurate, right, at the moment, and sometimes we import them from other nations and organizations, the UN and the world organizations, but we don't really contextualize them into how they're going to affect our society. What would be the downside of fully implementing what we are going for, the domestic work appreciation, and how will that change our operation as a society, as a family unit? Beyond the monetization, beyond now giving more time and saving what you'd call resources in terms of time and improving the lifestyle. Are we privy to what would be the downside of it?
I hear you, and there are times when we pick up things and we move them forward without thinking about our situation. I hear you. But I can tell you for one that societies are in flux. Societies are exposed to other, communities globally. And yes, we are borrowing, and sometimes we are borrowing without thinking. But in our case, we have done our own study here. What the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, UN Women, State Department for Gender, funded by the Gates Foundation, did was to go out there and look at what other people are doing in terms of how do they calculate the GDP of that country. How do you, I don't know whether to say demonstrate the prosperity of a country or whatever it is. How do you look at the prosperity of a country? Are we calculating the prosperity of a country accurately? Or is there something that we are leaving out, that we are not including? And that is where this care is coming in, that there's a hidden economy that we are not calculating and we are not whatever. So we did our own study, our own calculations. We looked at how we live, not how the white people live, how we live, what do we do on a day-to-day basis. And we determined that it is true that most of our women are doing a lot of work which is not recognized as work. As he said, my mother left work and went home. But she went home to work only that she was not paid.
And I want to look at it from a broader perspective, in the sense that, so based off this report, it is the value that we're talking about is 2.4 trillion. If you just look at the amounts that you're talking about and compare with the country's budget, 4 trillion. So 2.4 trillion is more than half. And one would look at it in terms of the monetary value just at the face of it. But let's just go back and look at this girl who's going to fetch water or firewood is losing 2 hours a day. If the government would invest and look at having gas systems closer home, you have water closer to this girl. So this girl has 2 hours that she can put into other important things, going to school, or even if it is going to the market. We are in a digital economy. She would be maybe any mtu wa forex online, our kule, They would be writing papers and all that. And you look at 2.4 trillion shillings that we do not have in our purse as a country because it is not valued. And perhaps then this research goes forth to involve or to direct policymakers on what needs to be done.
Absolutely, absolutely. The question is, what is the use? As you say, I think you had asked me that question. What is the use? First of all, it is helping us to be compliant to the SDG. Okay? The SDGs SDG 5 requires that we recognize that unpaid care and domestic work is an issue. That is one of the things, and we are doing that. That we value it, and we have done that. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has valued it, has said this number of hours per year, men and women alike, we are spending on unpaid care, domestic work. If we use a generalist wage rate, they have worked that to be about 73.1 shillings an hour. If we use a generalist rate, as you say, in a year, this sector would generate about 2.4 trillion. Okay? So what do we use? What is the point of this data? So one, SDG, as we said. Two, how do we invest as a country? How do we invest? How do we allocate our funds? In what sectors do we allocate our funds? Do we, for instance, grow the ECD sector? Because as we grow the ECD sector, then we train more teachers, okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Then we establish more schools. Then there's a lot of work around that. There are jobs around that. Even if it's around water systems, there would be jobs generated. If these girls were freed and these women were freed to be able to work, there would be income. And all that would contribute to the GDP of the country. I think that is what it's saying. Decision making around how we allocate our funds at county level, at national level, how we enhance our infrastructure around water systems, around energy, around schools, how we take care of our sick, how we allocate our social services. So it is used for decision making. It is used for compliance. So I think for me it's a very useful study. But it's also a beginning. Because this study is 2021, we are in 2025. It's also a beginning to move forward. Yeah.
I'd like to say that there's a nexus between your work and devolution. We've had a number of governors coming up with policy interventions around school feeding and they say they want to stop the parents for spending hours on end looking for food. Like, for instance, the governor for Murang'a has got a school feeding program, and also the governor for Nairobi, Sakaja, has got a school feeding program. Is there a close link to this?
I think the first thing to say is that we have one policy that we are developing, an umbrella that should embrace all of us in the country. But then this need to be cascaded to different counties. We have 47 counties. Their lived-in experiences are very different. What Murang'a is struggling with is very different from what Kisumu or whatever it is struggling with. So there's need to then cascade this policy to county levels so that it can inform decision making at those counties. If the county decides shida yetu ni maji, then let them invest their money in water. If they say our problem is nutrition, food for our children, then let them invest their money in nutrition. So really, in my mind, this study should help a lot more contextualization of the way that we spend our money as a country at county level, looking at what it is that our problem is and how we allocate our money. So in my mind, the governors need to be cognizant or be aware of this policy, and they need to look at this policy from their point of view. We piloted this program in West Pokot, Kitui, and Laikipia. And when we had a conversation with West Pokot, when we went back to say, okay, so since you understood this concept, how has that affected your thinking? And I was talking to the director of finance, and he said, one of the biggest problems we have is because of insecurity, our women have to walk long distance to take our children to school in the morning, before they come back. We are trying to increase the number of schools, so that she has a shorter distance to go so that she can come home. So that is saving time. We talked to an MCA who said, with the little money that I have, I want to improve the water points so that women don't have too much time to spend. So the investment then at county level would be context specific, depending on the lived-in experiences, depending on priorities of those communities.
And that speaks largely on, because we've just looked at the counties. So here is what the education CEC is saying, or what they will do, increase more schools. So here we have the other aspect that is now the CEC water will increase water points to lessen the number of the distance covered. But then again, you look at the underlying problem, which would be security. So security is the problem. So that then again is escalated to the national government to deal with security, so that the citizenry of this county are able to live a life that is of quality. But I want to look at it in terms of at our homes, in our homes, So we have individuals who are helping us, taking care of our elderly, those who are taking care of our children. And some, usually you find it's a relative who school fees was a problem, or you've brought someone from Uganda, Tanzania. And if you look at the statistics on how much we are paying vis-a-vis, there's a policy, NHIF and all these things, but there are those who say, namlipa, anakula kwangu, analala kwangu, so I decide the rate. So how do we have a conversation on a national level on how, first of all, this information will get to each and every person and understand that there is a law and that everyone plays by the rules? Because most of the time we have the law, but it remains being a suggestion.
So it's interesting. Anakula kwangu, analala kwangu has led to the 73.1 shilling wage rate. Okay, because they are taking care of other things. Otherwise, the rate should be higher than that. So I think for us it was first, do we have a policy in place? Because if we do have a policy in place, then we have a leg to stand on and to say, as a country, we are determined to recognize that the unpaid care and domestic work is an issue. Okay, so that was the beginning. The second, as I said, there are a lot, cascading this to county level so that it is county specific, so that different counties are dealing with what it is that is their issue and allocating their funding properly. But we have a lot of civil society organizations in this country, and they have been part and parcel of development of this policy. What is their role in raising awareness? Okay, what is their role in raising awareness? Just making sure that the communities are aware. We have used radio a lot. we have used radio, local radio language, like in West Pokot, the civil society organization we were working with was using radio, talking in the local language, bringing wazees, church members, men who think there's something you're saying, or women who are pushing back to say, I don't want a man in my kitchen. Because this attitude is not just one way. No, it is like I was brought up as Elizabeth to be proud of my kitchen. What is this man doing in my kitchen?
Get out of my kitchen.
Yes, I don't want him in my kitchen. Okay? So it is both ways. Nobody's saying that, it's both ways. Yeah. So there's been a lot of radio conversations in West Pokot in the local language to say, yes, this is who we are as a people, but should we not think differently? Should we not involve the government and make sure the government is investing so that we are freed? Is it not better when your wife is working, whatever work it is she's doing, and bringing in some money so that she contributes to the economy of this household? We have a situation where some men are so overwhelmed, okay? Because they are finding the economy is not doing very well. They have rent, they have school fees, they have everything. So can you imagine a situation where your wife is also able to contribute to that? It is also good for you, Yeah. So these issues around mental health of the men, boy child, you help the boy child by freeing the women's time, so that they are also able to contribute. So I think for me, it is a win-win situation.
Right.
Yes, there might be some people that might misconstrue, because there are people who are not very good at reading or understanding.
Yeah.
They also bring their own biases. So they might misconstrue and say, it means my husband is supposed to pay me. No, nobody's saying anything like the husband is supposed to pay you.
Does it mean that? Because there is fear as well. And that was actually going to be my next question. So there is fear that with this policy in place, then you'd find women telling their partners, because now there's a policy and it says you're supposed to pay me 118,000
Nobody says anything like that.
That you're supposed to pay me. So no.
No.
Is that a concern?
No, nobody is supposed to pay anybody.
But being in a society called Kenya, where people love litigation,
Yes.
Don't you think the probability does exist that a housewife, based on these reports, will be having a conversation with a High Court judge today,
saying
that according to these reports, I'm supposed to be paid XY amount of money? Or could it even be not used in divorce proceedings? That I've been your wife for 20 years, stay at home, and I can now use these reports to quantify. Absolutely. I mean, if that is a situation that needs to be looked at. I have been a housewife for 20 years. I wake up at 5 in the morning. I take care of the children. I clean the house. I wash your clothes. I cook your food. I do literally everything, including some smallholder food production, so that there's vegetables at the farm. At the end of the day, you are saying, my wife does not do any work. Then 10 years down the line, you're fed up of me, you're getting rid of me. Okay? And you're saying my wife has done nothing. But is it true? No. So it is, this data is beautiful data, because it can show that the wife has been contributing to the household economy. And paid work.
Yes, he has been contributing. He went out and worked, and he was paid. She stayed home, she worked. She was not paid, but it is equivalent to
what
this much. No. So if he has some, whatever it is, he can't just say, "Wenda kuna kitu li."
Elizabeth, these are the potential repercussions I was talking about, because they'll come in play. Because separation, divorce is going to happen, and men and women will continue to play their role as they should. Because again, remember, this is a unit. People have come together. By consent, they're raising a family. So when they get to a point where they choose to disagree, then how they divide their wealth is also another issue of context. Because remember, there is also inherited assets from the man, from the woman. Many things come in.
But I'm sure those calculations will come in.
My in a larger context, what I'm trying to look at is if we take away the monetization of this work, then what other index can we use to value what either man or woman brings into play? Because once we bring in the aspect of monetization, it gets a bit rough on the edges for people to appreciate, because some people may feel you're demanded more as a woman or as a man, or as a woman I have to work harder so the man can see what I'm doing is also equal to what is expected of me. Perhaps you could have other, moving forward, doesn't have to be now, other indexes that could help us define the valuation we are talking about, because again, these are humans and you don't want to get into the bedrooms and kitchens of family units. By law, through a policy that could disintegrate.
No, I hear you. But how do we calculate our gross domestic product? It's money value. It's market value. And we're trying to see how do we bring this hidden sector and put a money value on it. But having said what you've said, I have been part of what we call feminist economics, where they are saying there's a lot of qualitative type work that is happening that is difficult to quantify because we use mostly statistics, which is quantity. It's difficult to quantify qualitative interactions. So it's a conversation that is ongoing, but it can only be about stories, okay? Telling the stories of what this person does that contributes.